This is Duke University.
Maryam and Bruce came to Morocco a few weeks ago, 2-3 months ago, and we had a conversation together with a colleague of mine called Tayyib Belghazi about organizing a conference on art and revolution. And we had a wonderful discussion in a terrace on the old city of Rabat. And after Bruce and Maryam left, Tayyib and I started discussing what we'll be working on. And then we realized that we didn't have a revolution in Morocco. And we started looking for art that would be the topic of this conference, and we didn't really find anything of significance. So we were in a difficulty. We realized either these Duke people have seen something that we didn't see, or that maybe revolution arts take a longer time to mature. And in this case, we are probably ahead of our time. However, when started looking at what happened during what we are calling the revolutionary moment. In the case of Morocco, let me just tell you briefly a chronology of what would depict the revolutionary moment in Morocco. You had February 11th in 2011. I think this is when Mubarak was toppled. At that moment, it seemed as a revolutionary situation is there, because anything can happen, and the possibilities of change was so open. This is even much stronger than what happened earlier in Tunisia with the burning of Bouazizi, which is something that used to happen in Morocco every now and then, but it didn't have that effect. But the fact that Mubarak was toppled left the possibilities open, and so we call that a revolutionary situation. However, and then in February 20th, 2011, there is a movement which had called the February 20th movement, which was calling for the same, echoing the same frames, the same demands that were echoed throughout the Arab world. Now, something happened in Morocco that was different from other countries, because on March 9, 2011, the king gave a speech announcing his acceptance to have a new constitution. And then on July the 1st, we have a constitutional referendum. And this is all happening in 2011. And then on November 25th, we had parliamentary elections. And the outcome of parliamentary elections was that in January 3rd, 2012, we have we call it the Ben Kiran government, which is a government or a cabinet headed by the Islamist Party. So this is the revolutionary. Well, this period, the 2011, it witnessed the moment of the rise of the revolutionary situation until March the 9th, which signaled the decline of this revolution. Tayyib and I tried to look at what happened during these few weeks from February 20th to March the 9th. And what happened was a series of demonstrations happening throughout Morocco. And in during these demonstrations, something was displayed and was experienced that would resemble to a large extent the definition of revolutionary art. Because if art is for the artists who are the most engagés, the revolutionary artists, they seek to participate in the revolution, to create it, or to recreate it, to represent it, to imitate it, to frame it, and to take part of it. They want their art, these are the revolutionary artists, to be embedded in the revolution, to be the revolution. So when we looked at this, we realized that what was happening on the streets by the demonstrators was exactly this, because these are the revolutionaries these are the demonstrators who are enacting a revolution to the point where this difference between what art is and what the act is completely disappears. And we have selected for you 5 photos that would be representative, that will be the theme of this session. Or before that, let me just give you an explanation of what this title means. I think Tayyib al-Ghazi, who knows Duke, said that we have to come up with a title that is so confusing or so, because this is what would legitimate your trip. He couldn't come, so we said, forget what it means. Actually, what it means is that for a hybrid regime is the regime that was able to adapt to the revolution, although it didn't transform itself, it didn't change, but it was able to adopt itself. And this is why, although we had our elections, our new referendum, but the regime to a large extent remained as it was. And this is a concept that is becoming more and more used in the literature of political science, differentiating between a democratic regime and an authoritarian regime. And for a hybrid social movement, what we found out is that although we are talking about the revolution, but we haven't really taken or re-examined the accumulation of theoretical knowledge about social movements from the political science perspective. Is this a social movement? Is this a new social movement? So we came up with this title, the hybrid social movements are a constellation of new social movements that participated in the revolution, that participated in the demonstrations, but the end of which is that they didn't, as the new social movements, transform the regime. They acquired what they were seeking, which is the recognition, as the case of the new social movement. And then chaos, forget it. I don't know why we added chaos, but it's referring to the fact that nothing is stable. Everything is still there, and it's not an endless, it's not a closed-ended process. So for the first picture, this is the revolutionary. This is the revolution. The revolution, in the sense, is that the theater where the demonstrations happened was the two main streets in downtown Rabat, Avenue Hassan II and Avenue Mohamed V. And this is the theater that witnesses regular spectacles of demonstrations. And in this photo, you have the embodiment of a revolution, because the sign says "Ash al-Shab," long live the people, whereas the same street witnesses on a regular basis the parade of the king, where it is the king who would be in the same center of that photo of where Ash al-Shab is, and then people would say Ash al-Malik, long live the king. So this rather than looking at the demonstrations or at the art as the resemblance of revolution, we are considering that this is it. The revolution is it, because you have this reversal of you have the toppling of the regime. This is the equivalent of the beheading of King Louis XVI. And the second photo is the Shab Yurid. This is the term that was echoed throughout the Arab world, which, as you all know, it echoes the poem of Shabi, who died in 1934. And it is if one day the people wills to live, then fate must obey, darkness must dissipate, and must the chain give away. The photo or the artwork that you have there is the representation of this poem. And it is not only that this art is representing the poem, the art is walking on the same streets and enacting and experiencing this taken over by the people's will. And of course, as you know, this Shabi's poem echoes again another text by Étienne de la Boétie, Discours de la servitude volontaire, which was a 16th century text saying that the dictatorships last because of the willingness of the people to submit to the dictator's authority. Once the people become aware of their power as the source of the might of their repressors, then they can repossess their power and rebel against repression. And in this parade or in this demonstration, this is what the people did on the street. The third, there's also someone mentioned yesterday, Jacques Rancière, who was talking about the aesthetic of revolution. And in this case, we are witnessing that the aesthetic revolution blurs the borders between the logic of facts and the logic of fiction. and it introduces a new mode of rationality, a new way of thinking about history. And this is a new thinking about history where the people not only reinterpret history, but they invent a new history, and they play it, they perform it. For the third photo, you probably are familiar with the T-shirt. I don't know if I'm supposed to say the F word on US campuses, but what it says, this T-shirt says, I don't need sex, the government F's me every day. Now, this is something that if you take a look, if you Google this word or this expression, you will find it in so many different countries. This is something that has been expressed and displayed and sang by people throughout the world. And what we have looked here is that it led us to think about the question of the globalization of the revolutionary repertoire. But what this woman who did is something that what gives this expression a revolutionary charge is the fact that the message is being enacted by a woman, very likely a Muslim woman, on the main street of Rabat, the capital city of a Muslim country, surrounded by men holding signs in Arabic, the language of the Quran. One of them brandishes the slogan, for the purpose of establishing a national democratic state, the state of citizenship and modernity, where religion and politics are separated. Now, we also thought about the importance of appropriating a T-shirt and an expression. What is artistic about it, or what is revolutionary about it? And we were thinking that it's not that different from what Andy Warhol does, taking something that is very trivial and putting it or displaying it in a museum. To my surprise, we were thinking about the canned soup when we were thinking about this. And then when we visited the museum here in Durham, we found that the original copy, I have no idea how you will find, or you artists, how you can determine whether it is the original copy, but Miriam, I believe her, told me this is the original copy of the same painting by Andy Warhol. So this is a woman who is doing what Andy Warhol is doing, and at the same time expressing something that is so revolutionary in the Moroccan street. Finally, I have another one is this photo. Yesterday, when Thoraya was showing his slides, this is a very familiar photo that you will find in many revolutionary experiences, where emphasizing the peacefulness of the revolutions, and giving a rose or a flower to the police, which transforms completely this confrontational situation that is supposed to take place in a revolution. A revolution is supposed to be bloody, and the confrontation is supposed to be total. But here we have the reverse of this in what is called the peaceful revolutions since the mid 20th century, starting with the Portuguese Revolution, and we found a photo of the Portuguese Revolution in 1975, which is very much like this one, where a woman is giving flower to a policeman. There is a lot of theory or discussion about the fact that it's almost close to the conspiracy theory, where all this revolutions in the Arab world, or the Arab Spring, is the creation of chaos by the superpowers, namely the United States. And we found there is this book called The Politics of Nonviolent Action by an American political scientist called Sharp, and Sharp has in his book 198 measures for waging a successful peaceful war. One of these measures is the symbolic gestures. And this book has been translated to Arabic and to many countries. However, I don't think that the conspiracy theory would explain what happens, but it is definitely an interesting entry to see what is the meaning of a peaceful revolution in this case. And I'm going to read for you the interpretation that we give to this text, to this photo, which the rose is a tactical gesture that reversed the unbalanced potential clash between the man and the woman, the police and the civilian, the armed and the unarmed, into a play of intimate seduction, where the protester has the upper hand. The act was not meant to be intimate, as it was taking place at the guarded gates of the parliament, the Moroccan parliament, and as the woman, the leading character in this case, was posing to be captured by the paparazzis of the street revolutionary performances for the moment to be recorded and soon after diffused worldwide in social media, testifying the battle's victory, the happy ending of a day's performance. But look at this game of seduction between the policeman and the woman, and if you take away the arm or the baton of the policeman, you would realize that it is mostly it is a game. It is a game of seduction more than a revolutionary act. But here you reverse the relationship between the revolutionary and the oppressor into a relationship of seduction, a love affair, where each brandishes his and her weapon, and the woman, of course, the female demonstrator ends up winning in this particular situation. The final photo is this is another performance of the Salafists. These are women. This is the performance of the Salafists consisted in the conquest of the street by a crowd of females wearing the burqa. This is an unusual scene in daily life of Mohamed V Avenue in Rabat. But while the faces of the women were completely veiled, that of their relatives, detainees in the Moroccan prison sentenced for terrorism, were displayed in a collage printed in a large banner or identified in single photos held individually by the female marchers. The street serves as a theater stage where the prisoners, who are kept out of public sight, are brought to bright light. The identities of the women are also alluded to, as behind each veiled woman, there is this display of the photo and the name of her relative, mostly their husbands. The bystanders are brought in the performance in the camera of the veiled demonstrators as evidence of the attendance of an audience witnessing the existence of the prisoners and their symbolic transfer from the closed prison cells to the bright daylight. In this show, the prisoners it's not only a show, but in this enactment, we have the prisoners are presently freed and are shown as if they are taking part in the March of Rabat, the main street, defiantly. Now, we find that this could lead us to a discussion, and we don't have time for it now, but the discussion of post-Islamism. Now, this will be the symbol of Islamists, but the theme have nothing to do with Islam. These are women who are demanding the freedom of their relatives on the basis without making any reference to religious symbols, to religion. And their burqa, in this case, looks as it has the appearance of an Islamic symbol, but the enactment and the process itself is very political. I will go to, and then I will end with this. This is one aspect of what we are doing with this with art and revolution. The embodiment, the enactment, and the experience of revolutions on the public streets. Then there is another component of this project, which is what happened afterwards. This is the euphoric stage of the revolution, and then afterwards we go to the deceptions, the period of the deceptions. And in this case, we found that the fiction that was written about the revolution depicts more profoundly the sentiment that it didn't work, it failed. And then there is the occurrence of the themes that are so common in the political culture, in the Islamic Arab political culture, which is a nakba, a naksa, the crisis, al-azma, which are all expressions of the fact that politics fail us, that politics doesn't end well. Politics means the recurrence of authoritarianism, of repression, etc. And this we find it in the fictions that we have looked at. However, In this same fiction, we are finding that the deceptions do not convey the message of the depoliticization, but they convey a part of repoliticization, a new way of thinking about politics. And the fictions are celebrating the self, celebrating the body, and celebrating sexuality, which is indicative of the fact that whatever happened in the Arab Spring in the Moroccan case, you had whether in the euphoric period or in the euphoric stage or in the stage of deception, you also have the emergence of a new entry to politics, a redefinition of politics. I think I...
Yeah, okay. Awesome.